Welcome back to my channel, the best place for hardworking and ambitious millennial professionals who feel stuck in their careers to find their dream careers. In my last video, I explained the benefits of using informational interviews for career exploration. In this video, I'm going to dive deeper on how to arrange informational interviews and its do's and don'ts in terms of etiquette. So make sure you subscribe and click the notification bell to receive regular updates on all things related to career change. Also, join my Facebook group called Career Change Advice, where you can chat with like-minded people who are interested in making their careers work for them rather than the other way around. Hi, I'm Dr. John Tam. I have a PhD in sociology from Oxford, and I'm passionate about helping millennial professionals find their dream careers through gaining clarity and building soft skills. So without further ado, here's how to set up informational interviews and its do's and don'ts. Number one, you need to do your homework on your target. And definitely check out my video on career exploration strategies, which I'll put in the links above in terms of how to do that homework. But basically, you need to identify the position you're interested in and find a person who is typically about 5 to 10 years down the road of who you want to be like, what type of person they are, learn what's their company. And after identifying that target position and then finding the right person who is in that position, you basically reach out via LinkedIn, email, and Twitter, right? In that order. If you reach out on LinkedIn and they don't reply, then move on to email. If you go on email and they don't reply, then try Twitter. And if Twitter doesn't work, then it's time to give up and move on to another person, right? But essentially, you want to reach out to them and ask for an informational interview. You are not asking for a job. You are not asking for an interview or a job interview. You are asking for an informational interview, which is learning more about that position, learning more about that person, and learning more about that journey on how to get to that position. If you hear radio silence, it doesn't mean it's a rejection. Just remember to keep trying, right? LinkedIn, email, Twitter. And if none of that works after a while, then pretty much then it's time to move on, right? But radio silence doesn't mean rejection. People are busy, and helping people who are interested in their career path isn't exactly a high priority for a lot of people. So remember to keep on trying. Don't give up. You need to reach out to people. But basically, you need to keep in mind, if you don't advocate for yourself, there's basically no one else who's going to be your advocate. So you need to do your thorough research and you need to keep trying. Before you enter this informational interview, definitely do some personal analysis first using SWOT. And I have a video on that, which I'll put in the links above. But a personal SWOT analysis is basically an excellent way to help you identify your strengths, your weaknesses, and what opportunities you can exploit and what are some threats to your position. And by doing that, you enter the informational interview much more prepared than you would otherwise. When you reach out, you have to give context or the source of the connection. So who referred you? What event did you guys both attend? What content did you come across that sparked your interest in reaching out in the first place, whether it's an article, video, or a LinkedIn post? And you gotta shoot a message, and I'll put the message on the screen right now so you can just copy that template. But say something like this: Dear Jesse, Sam at Skynet referred me to you. I'm John. I'm currently considering a career change and I'm interested in a career in whatever this person is in. Would you be willing to spend 20 minutes with me discussing your career in the next few weeks? Thank you for your time. I look forward to hearing from you, John. Right? And basically, just leave it at that. It's a very simple and straightforward message, which basically tells them your intent, what you're asking for, which is 20 minutes and no more. 30 minutes is a lot, but 20 minutes is like, okay, it's like a coffee, right? And so that's very much doable. And remember, when you ask for 20 minutes, you gotta honor it. And I'll talk more about this later on. Essentially, you need to send that message out in a professional manner so that people are like, okay, yeah, let's talk. This person's interested in a career change. And a lot of people are actually very interested in helping out others who are interested in their career path because they've probably been through it themselves, or they've seen it enough that like, hey, I want to help people out in transitioning into my line of work. And you never know, they might also be thinking like, hey, I got a position that's maybe opening up within the next 2 years and maybe this person's a fit, or I want more people on my team who have skills in XYZ, and you may fit the bill. So never rule yourself out before even asking the question, because what's the worst that could happen? They don't reply or they say no, right? And that's really not that big of a deal. Then you move on. You will get rejections. Typically, the acceptance rates for like totally cold outreach is about 10%, depending on your LinkedIn profile. So make sure you have that polished first. But essentially, you only need a handful of people who say yes to really get that informational interview ball rolling. And I'll explain that in the next video where I give you the full list of interview questions you need to ask on an informational interview. So definitely click the subscribe button and hit the notification bell for when it comes out. But my promise to you is this: if you send out 50 messages, which really isn't that much if you do like 5 to 10 a day, and if you get like a 10% acceptance rate, who say yes. That's basically 5 people who you get to interview. And then from there on, to spiral into something like 20 to 25 to 50, it's much easier. And I'll teach you how to do that in a future video. The second major thing you need to keep in mind when you are setting up an informational interview is etiquette. And etiquette is super important because you want to signal to the other person that you are a fit for their culture. And in social psychology, we call this signal theory, right? You need to signal the common symbols that say that you are an insider, that you are outside of your tribe right now, but you are really, you know, the same type of person that is a perfect fit for their tribe. So that's where the research comes in. Research their company culture. Look up pictures of their company on LinkedIn or Instagram if they're on Instagram, and see what people dress like on a normal basis. If it's like suit and tie, then on that informational interview, make sure you wear the same thing. If it's like business casual, then do that. But essentially, you want to mimic their culture, mimic their language, look at their posts on LinkedIn and what people are saying, and if they're in that same company, what's the type of language they're using, and so on. And then after figuring out how they signal to one another and their language and their culture, you move on to maximizing the contact. Nowadays, it's COVID, so you don't want to meet face to face, but you want to at least maximize on Zoom or Teams or Skype or whatever you want to use. And if you can't get your face on camera, then at least do a phone call, right? And if you can't do a phone call, then use an email process or a messaging process. But you basically want to maximize the exposure you have to one another. The next thing you want to do is you definitely want to buy the coffee or lunch if it's in person. And if you can't meet in person, definitely send them a coffee. And definitely check out this website called Coffees on Me, which is a platform made by my friend Ray Kanani, who is the founder of it. And basically what that platform does is you get to send someone a coffee over the internet, and that person just goes to Starbucks and gets it. But it's a very effective way of building that reciprocity and saying, hey, I appreciate your time. Here's a coffee, coffee's on me, right? And a quick disclaimer, I'm getting no kickback, no benefit from this. I just really believe in the mission, in that it's really important to, you know, be human and add the human touch when it comes to networking and connecting with people. So definitely buy lunch, buy coffee. It's just good manners, all right? The next thing is you want to turn off distractions during that meeting. Turn off your cell phone, turn off notifications. Basically block off that time so that you can totally be there and be present, because that person is giving you their time. And if you look at it from a monetary standpoint, and I understand, like, you know, money is not everything, but if this person is making 80 bucks an hour and they're giving you 20 minutes, they're actually giving you something like $27, right? So you want to be there and you want to make a good impression, because you never know this person who you're making a connection with, whether it's going to lead to bigger and better things in the future. Another major thing is to arrive early. And this is super important, and this comes from my research as a sociologist. When you interview someone and you make an appointment to meet at a cafe or something, and then this person is sitting there and waiting for you to go in, then basically you are going there asking them for a favor, right? Because they're the host. Now, if you are the one that's hosting the Zoom meeting, for example, right? You send the invite and you let them into the door. Or if you are at the cafe first, sitting down and waiting for them to come in, what that means is that it's kind of more of an equal power position, even though the reality is you are asking them and they're in a power position because you're asking them for information, but it comes across as much more equal. And it reminds me of a story where this sociologist was, you know, researching the stripper community, and when he asked the stripper for an interview, the stripper's like, yeah, sure, go to my workplace and I'll talk to you, right? And then when he went into the workplace, he got the interview, but basically it was like people were going in and out, they were changing, and, you know, she was totally naked in that change room and they were talking. He was basically totally in a powerless position, and that interview went wrong very quickly because, like, he simply was begging for information and she was like, I'm in my power position, right? But basically it's the same idea. If you're asking a CEO or a VP for an informational interview and you are going to their office and they're the host, and if that's the only way, then go along with it. If you go to a neutral position or a neutral location, what that means is you guys are on equal playing fields. Once you sit down and get started, give them a short and quick outline of who you are, kind of like give them a rundown of your resume, but don't actually give them a resume. You need to have a resume ready in case they ask you for one and then they want to review it and to see what advice they can give you. But essentially you want to give them a brief overview of yourself, introduce yourself, and then let them take the stage, because the informational interview is about them giving you information. And the truth of the matter is, you're not going to impress them with giving them, you know, a long story and long diatribe about selling yourself. Instead, you want them to talk about themselves, and by talking about themselves, they'll like you more, because people love people who listen to them talk. And so essentially, you need to give a brief introduction of yourself and let them take center stage. Now let's talk about what's going to actually happen on the call. Well, you want to first start with thanking them for their time, and then you reiterate your desire to stick to the 20 minutes. And you need to set the boundaries and enforce them out of respect for them. And if setting boundaries is something that you struggle with, I have a video on how to set healthy boundaries with coworkers. The principles are pretty much the same, but essentially you need to know how to set healthy boundaries. And this is super important in an informational interview, because you want them to be impressed by you. And if you can't respect the 20-minute ask, then basically they're going to be like, okay, this person is not a person of their word. What do you think about keeping to 20 minutes? Let me know in the comments below. You need to tell them, hey, it's 20 minutes now, and my promise to you was I'm only going to take 20 minutes of your time. And then you need to wrap it up by thanking them and asking them, can you contact them in the future? And if they say yes, awesome, because that means that when you do anything that's on that list of suggestions that they gave you, you can then go back to it, like, hey, I've done this. What are my next steps? And the next step may actually be a job, or they may point you in a new direction that may be super helpful. So definitely keep in mind that once you make this connection, you need to continue nurturing this connection. And even if they want to give you more time and they're having a blast talking about themselves, you need to stop it, right? Because if they give you 20 more minutes, the next time you reach out to them, they're gonna be like, last time you asked for 20 minutes, and then we ended up spending 60 minutes on this. And they won't remember that they're the ones who offered to push it to 60 minutes. And so in that case, like, say 20 minutes, stick to 20 minutes, you'll stand out better that way, because they won't remember that they're the ones who offered the 40 extra minutes, and then they'll feel like this person's a time drain, I don't want anything to do with this person, right? And then that'll be a dead network, a dead node in your network, and so you don't want that. The fourth important thing about informational etiquette is to follow up. You need to write them a thank you note. The best approach would be a handwritten letter. The second best approach would be an email. The third best would be a DM, right? But send something thoughtful, like a video or article that reminded you of the conversation. Send them updates on your progress once in a while, and connect again when you completed all of their recommendations. You need to show appreciation, and you need to share the helpful aspects of their advice. However, you need to remember, you are never asking for a job, and if they don't reply to any of your follow-ups after many tries, so for example, if you contact them monthly for 6 months in a row and there's no reply, then you know that this person's a cold lead, and therefore you should probably stop after 6 months. But during that 6 months, don't worry, just send them an update once a month, follow up, like their stuff on LinkedIn, share their stuff on LinkedIn. So here's an example of a thank you note that you could write the person who gave you an information interview. Dear Jesse, thank you for taking the time to share your career experience with me. It was helpful to hear you talk about XYZ. Our conversation inspired me to continue exploring opportunities in your field and look into opportunities to boost my skills. I appreciate the connections to your colleagues, and I look forward to speaking to them, and will keep you updated on further developments. Sincerely, John. And so you may be wondering, when did they put me in touch with their colleagues? And I'll talk about that in my next video. The fifth and final tip is to keep nurturing that network, and you want to stay in the loop. You want to stay engaged on LinkedIn. And by keeping in the loop, you'll keep front of mind, and that when in the future, the time comes for you to revisit them and revisit this conversation, they're in a position to do that. And one of the best tips that I have is to create content on the informational interview experience, whether it's a blog, or whether it's a LinkedIn post, or whether it's a YouTube video. So for example, if you interviewed 5 people in the industry and then you decide to create a summary of your experience and share it with the network, and then you tag them on LinkedIn, what happens is that their network sees it, it positions you as an authority of interviewing and learning about the industry, it positions them as experts in that field, and then they're much more likely to share your post, because it's like, hey, this person interviewed me, and this is their way of contributing to that community, to that industry. And so by doing that, you get to get a lot of people to have more eyes on you. You get to position yourself as an expert about learning about this industry, You may even open up opportunities for internships or co-ops or just work experiences for you to make that transition. So definitely this is something that I would highly recommend. And I discussed the importance of maintaining a strong network for when you navigate career crossroads, and I'll put that video in the cards above. Now, if you're watching this video, you may be watching it because you are interested in learning about informational interviews to navigate a career change. And the very first step of doing that is to gain clarity. So I highly recommend you to check out my free training called Stop Feeling Stuck, Find Your Dream Career, which I'll put in the details below. You can also check out my free guide on how to find your ideal career, or you can also take a free, quick, and accurate personality test to find out what's a good fit for you in your career, also in the details below. Make sure you join my Facebook group, Career Change Advice, so that you can be in a community of people who are interested in making their careers work for them. In my next video, I'm going to share with you the best informational interview questions to ask. So make sure you subscribe and click the notification bell for updates when it comes out. Also, leave a comment below and let me know your thoughts. Don't forget to give it a like and share it with your network if you found this to be valuable. Take care.